Welcome to the Killer Content Corner on the Late Night Chat Network with Leslie Stats and JT. It's been a while, guys. It's been a while.
It has, hasn't it? That was a long one there, man. I thought we were gonna lose people. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I'm back, guys. Thanks for being patient with me. But I'm back with a big one. This isn't your typical serial killer. It actually isn't a serial killer. Before I start, I should let you guys know that I'm diverging into also non-serial killer cases. It'll also be like some just crazy killer stories that I come across as well. Just to mix it up, guys, it is killer content. It's not serial killer content. I've just been like, it started with my passion and like not for serial killers, but for the psyche that goes on behind a serial killer's mind, um, and I guess also I felt the need that these victims needed their stories told. Um, so that's why I really wanted to do this show. But this one is full of twists and turns. It's a very long one. So, as I guess
buckle
an
up.
initiation of me coming back, this is going to be a two-parter, guys. So, you'll get the first episode today. And then in a couple weeks, you'll get the second one.
Nice.
And yeah, I don't know, man. This is probably one of the most
22 pages, guys.
Yeah, I had to.
I got today.
I had to. I couldn't cut it out. Like, I mean, there was just too much stuff that went on with this murder.
You were spending all your free time on this one, man. Yeah, I know that when we tried to talk. What are you doing? Oh, well, I'm trying to do some research on this next killer content.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was work being done, guys. It's just
my references for this one was Murderpedia, of course, because it's always Murderpedia.
Okay.
And a really cool podcast called The Girl in the Blue Mustang.
Okay.
And it was a 6-part series and is just crazy. I couldn't stop listening to it. It was so detailed. And so I still had to compress 6 episodes into a 2-hour informative. It'll probably be over 2 hours informative episode for you guys, because it's the most fucked up thing that happened. So without further ado, let's get this party started.
I was gonna say
it's Michelle O'Keefe.
okay.
This is the story of Michelle O'Keefe. Okay. And I'm starting this podcast. The title is the victim's title and not the killer's title.
Okay. So this is a little different, guys.
It's a very technically it's unsolved, but it is solved.
Mm-hmm.
But legally it's unsolved still. I'm sure that will be changed, but there are so many twists and turns that you don't see coming that like it's beyond. So
It's beyond.
Yeah.
If Leslie's saying that, guys,
I'm just gonna tell you the story, guys.
Turn.
Michelle O'Keefe, she's an 18-year-old girl, and she was born October 11th, 1981. Just like a month younger than me and JT. And she was born in Hanford, California. Michelle was known to be what we nowadays would call an overachiever. So the opposite of JT. She
Excuse me? Uh, this is, you see, guys. This is what happens. She's gone for a few months, like for a little while. We haven't seen her on the show, and all of a sudden, she's got to start taking shots. All right, guys. Well, remember that. Make sure to like and subscribe, just for Leslie herself, okay? Because she'll bring you all those wise jokes. There you go, with a
Stop, it makes
smile.
it fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it keeps you on your toes.
yeah.
I'm
That was
still
it.
waiting for you to come back with a good comeback towards me, but I still haven't heard that. I could still out comeback you.
All
So
right,
okay.
we'll figure it out one day.
So she wasn't just beautiful, she was really smart too. See, when she was 12, she was
Mm,
taking college courses at 12 years old. She
nice.
graduated with a university in calculus degree, and she graduated a year early from high school. She was a cheerleader in high school and was always a supportive, fun loving friend. For Christmas, her parents were so proud of her that they bought her a brand new blue Mustang.
Nice.
She was going to school full time, and her pretty looks got her a part time work as an extra in movies and music videos.
There you go. She's
Yeah.
living the life.
Yeah. Well, it's your typical, I guess, dream California girl life, right?
Almost. Yeah, I would say. Seems like it.
Um, she got into that because her aunt in LA was in a few movies and thought her niece would be great to get some extra money by being an extra. And once she got into it, she kept calling her for work. So she was 18 in her second year of university and on the dean's list, and she had the whole world ahead of her. It's February 12th, 1999. And she wakes up in the morning. She's excited because she has another gig in LA. And this time she's taking her best friend. And her best friend did everything together. So like if she got a job, she'd call her best friend Sarah
Mm,
and say, "Okay, let's go here, let's go there. I got this job. Maybe there's an extra work for you." She was going to shoot a Kid Rock video. I don't know if you remember, but Kid Rock was at his peak during this time.
mhm.
She asks her younger 12-year-old brother if he wants to take along. He says no because he was getting over strep throat and he didn't want to miss any more school.
Okay.
So she gets in her Mustang. Her friend Jen rode behind her. She parked her Mustang in a private parking lot by the college campus because she thought she could be back in time for the evening for the English class. So she's taking night school classes as well, right?
Okay. Okay.
Um, Now, remember, like this is a park and ride. It in the US, and what I can compare it to here is people who live outside of Toronto that take the GO train in and they leave it in that parking lot in the GO
Yeah.
station parking lots. That's what a
Yeah.
park and ride is in the US, right? So like
Yeah.
you can leave it and your car somewhere and then carpool or take a train or take a bus somewhere else.
Okay.
Um, she made sure to park it under a light because we're girls and we have to think about stuff like this when we drive at night, right?
True. I didn't think of that, but yeah, true.
Yeah,
Very smart.
you men are fortunate to not have to think about things like that. We have to think about how the fact that ponytails make us a target. It makes it easier for men to assault us by grabbing onto them. We have to think about what we wear when we shouldn't, right? Have to, right? We have to think about where we park our cars at night. We have to think about walking in the lights, or being on the phone when you're walking home at all sketchy hours. Women in general have it
There's a
harder
lot of things I guess I take,
that guys
us guys
take for
take
granted,
advantage, take for
right?
granted. Yeah.
So she jumped in the car with Jen and they were off to LA to the Kid Rock shooting location. The
Hmm.
video was actually for Bawataba, and that was the song that we put on in the beginning. It's actually one of the few favorite songs that I have by Kid Rock. I have a couple of good ones that I really like.
Hmm.
Um, I don't like him on a personal level, to be honest, but whatevs. But his music I like. So um, Michelle at the end of the shoot realized she was running late. So she called her professor on the way to the campus, and her friend Jen said that the parking lot was pretty empty and it's now 9 o'clock. So she pulled up behind Michelle's Mustang while Michelle was on the phone to her favorite radio station, Kiss FM, trying to win concert tickets Do you remember those days when you would listen and like try to get like call in either to like request your song on the radio
And
or
hope it
get
gets.
tickets
Hopefully, you get
somewhere or
through.
like
Yeah.
back in the day, guys, we're the generation in between internet. Like we know what it's like to live without the internet. We know what it's like to live with the internet. So that's our generation. You know,
Yeah.
we a little bit
We
of old school, a little bit of new school. We're
just
like,
a little bit of no crazy social media. Well, yeah, up until about high school, I would think, right?
yeah, in college I didn't get social media until I had my son.
Well, yeah, was it that late? How long? Like in the 20s then? You think
Yeah,
so?
in my early 20s. I mean, social media existed.
Because I mean, I had the cell
I
phone
just
and whatever.
pardon?
We had cell phones just after like high school and
We
just in high
did.
school.
My sister was younger than me, is younger than me, not was, is. And she had MySpace.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting with her. I was like 20 years old. And what are you doing? I'm chatting with my friends. I'm like, via email? And she's like, no, it's MySpace. Right. And I was just like, what's MySpace? So MySpace was like, for those who weren't born then,
Was it like
uh,
the one that they had for Hotmail? Not Hotmail. Yeah, Hotmail. Like that chat or whatever the
it was
fuck
the
it was.
AOL chat.
AOL. Yeah,
So
like that,
that was
right?
before MySpace, but MySpace kind of like came in a couple years before Facebook, and it was really cool because you had like this whole, it was like your own personal blog, kind of like Facebook, but you can decorate it any way you wanted to. There was like a side chat for your friends, or you can inbox them. You weren't putting really posts up as much. It was
Mhm.
more of like a very interactive kind of
It
situation.
was kind of more kept towards you and your personal friends and stuff like that
Yeah,
instead
like a
of
group
out there.
chat, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah,
online,
yeah.
right? So like that's how it first started. And then Facebook just kind of like took over, and
Took
then
over.
MySpace
Yeah.
died, right?
Okay, okay.
But
I
I
remember
remember
those
like
good old
she used
days.
to like put on these cool decorations in the back, like glitter and like unicorns and like pink, because her favorite color was pink. It was pretty cool, right? And then I remember I
You
tried
know,
it once. I opened up a whole MySpace account and I tried it once and realized that none of my friends were on MySpace. So I was like, okay, my generation doesn't do this thing. We just still call each other, right? So
yeah.
I was like,
Mhm.
so it was like, it was a little different. And then Facebook went on and then everybody joined Facebook, right?
Yeah. And
So
then I
it
was
was like that. I when I read this, I was kind of like, because she was my age, right? Like I totally could see this whole ambience happening because I was also calling radio stations trying to get tickets, or also calling radio stations and getting them to play my favorite songs,
yeah.
right? Like
Because
yeah.
it was this age. We were the same age.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
so
it's
that
pretty
was
crazy.
that time.
Yeah.
She waited for Michelle to get in the car like a good friend, and f- she made sure that Michelle flashed her lights so she could leave on her way home, knowing that her best friend was safely in her Mustang.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
like that's a good friend, you know. Like I'm gonna drive you home, and I'm gonna make sure you're safe, and blah blah blah. Right? Flash your lights to let me know that no one's in the car with you, because someone could break into the car. Make sure you know whatnot. Just after midnight, so we're gonna fast forward in time. Jen has now left Michelle, right? And just after midnight, Detective Richard Longshore and his partner Diane Harris arrived at the parking lot. Michelle had already been dead for 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. I froze up there. I don't know why my internet connection is a little bit low right now. Could be because I have everybody upstairs.
Oh,
I have some people up there, but everything's off, so I don't know why it's not doing that, even for this kind of recording. But it's going back up. It should be okay.
okay. So
There you
Michelle
go.
had already been dead for 3 hours.
Hmm.
TV cameras were already there. And when the detectives got to her body, they observed the following: there were several gunshots, although they weren't sure of how many.
Hmm.
She was leaned in her car with her head over to one side. She had one leg extended out of the car, and there were several shell casings on the ground. It took them a few hours before they got an idea of what happened.
Hmm.
Michelle had been shot point blank in the chest, and 3 other times in the face and neck. Her wounds included blunt force trauma to her forehead. There was one witness, a security guard named Raymond Jennings, who radioed shots fired to his supervisor hours earlier. He was new, his second night on the job. And it was 1:20 a.m. when Longshore got around to talking to the guy. He was freezing his ass off by that point because he had been waiting around since he heard the car alarm go off at 9:30. So, timeline here, Jen leaves her at 9, drops her off, gets out, and then at 9:30 that's where he hears the gunshots, right? He told the cops that he recognized that as being a Mustang alarm, and he heard the engine racing, and he walked back towards his car, which was parked between the Mustang and himself, and heard a single gunshot. He took cover and looked up beyond the car and saw the Mustang rolling backwards with additional shots being fired until it came to rest at the top of the planter. The guard said he was 100 yards away with his line of sight partially blocked by a van, so he couldn't see the shooter. He said he called for help and he expressed a fear that the shooter was still there and he was unarmed. He didn't have a firearm since it was an unarmed guard post, which this surprised me because I didn't know, considering that the US of A is so happy and gun friendly and the right to bear arms, that there are security guards who are not allowed to carry guns like here. Like I have security in my building and they don't have guns,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Um and a lot of them don't.
Hmm.
And I mean, we're not a gun happy country, I guess. But this surprised me considering it was a guard post in a parking lot in the US of A, and it's a non, like you're not allowed to have guns, right?
Yeah. That
Although
is
the
weird.
investigators studied the crime scene till sunrise, they didn't have much else to go on. They looked at all the usual suspects, the usual. um is this a domestic dispute or a lovers quarrel? No boyfriends? Was this a robbery? Her purse was there with over $100. The only thing missing was her cell phone, and the purse was in plain view in the car. Was this a carjacking? No one knew that she was coming from a video shoot. None of it made any sense. She parked the car there with her friend around 1 p.m., went to LA, and drove back to the parking lot around 9:30. It makes no sense that a person would just sit there because this Mustang is there and wait in and like the Mustang's there and to wait in freezing temperatures for all those hours and then not take the car. It just didn't fit, right?
Hmm.
Like for being a robbery, like
Hmm.
it's a fucking blue Mustang. Why wouldn't you steal it?
Yeah.
Right? So, and the money's there and whatnot.
Hmm.
So the detective Longshore was stumped. There was no obvious motive, no enemies, no vices. She wasn't a party girl. She was a religious. And whatever dangers lurked out there, Michelle's mother, Pat, said her daughter was ready for them. Because besides being a complete overachiever, this girl was also, to add on to all her achievements, a badass who took boxing. So she
The
knew how to
kickboxing,
defend.
right?
Yeah, kickboxing. Yeah. So like she was a badass. Like she knew how to defend
Hmm.
herself. So all of this, none of it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Then there was the question of sexual assault. See, she was found with her breasts partially exposed, which had nothing to do with the paramedics because they said that she was like that when they found her. So this is at the very least told a story of some sort of confrontation before she got shot. The
Hmm.
security guard, Jennings, had also said he found her like that. They called the Ford Motor Company regarding the Mustang security feature, and that made the model didn't have the feature of the doors automatically locking when you start to drive.
Hmm.
So you had to do it manually.
Yeah.
It's like it was an older model,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So like you know how like you get into your car and all of a sudden all the doors lock
Oh,
automatically when
yeah.
you start
They go as
driving?
soon as you push drive, and yeah, they lock.
Yeah, they lock. No, that specific model did not have that.
No.
Now her mom, Pat, was really worried because even though she knew those shoots ran late, it wasn't like her daughter not to answer her phone when she called. And
Okay.
that's when she said she got up and in the foot of her bed, she saw an image of her daughter crying and she just knew that her daughter was dead. It was 3 a.m. when their phone went off with a knock on the door and the rotating amber light of a cop car raking their dark living room. And the rest was just confirmation of what that poor mother's tragic premonition of her daughter was. Right? That's
Imagine that, eh?
fucked up, man. In the early days of the investigation, detectives, of course, had a lot of questions about what happened in the parking lot. So they went back to the only witness they had, the security guard.
So yeah, they the only witness.
Yeah. Raymond Jennings. They described him as a very cordial with a southern accent from North Carolina
Okay.
and very polite during their encounters with him. You know, that southern charm.
Okay.
He told Detective Longshore that when he heard the gunshots, he took cover behind his own car until his supervisor got there. And then reluctantly he went down to get closer look. He said it was about 9:45, a few minutes before the first responders arrived, which to me honestly for an unarmed security guard that sounds like the best protocol to follow, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
to even
you
go down there, I mean, you got to wait till at least the people took off or something took off or whoever's
right?
shooting, right? Yeah.
He later told Longshore he felt bad that he didn't see more, right?
Hmm.
See, detectives know that sometimes the best memory someone has is right after the incident. That's why they have a line of questioning called a cognitive interview, where they're supposed to recall what they had seen or done earlier that day, might help them remember things like missing details, right?
Okay.
They said Jennings looked relaxed. He was wearing a sleeveless t-shirt and comfortable shorts, like he was chatting with a good friend instead of with Detective Diane Harris about a gruesome murder. So while he's being interviewed, this guy's cash, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, this happened. Oh yeah, and this happened, right?
Yeah.
He said when he got close, she was still twitching, and he first tried to pull her out and tried his first aid on her. When the detective asked him why didn't he render first aid, because sorry, I had a typo here.
Okay.
Uh, to them that she was still alive and saw body movement and stuff. He said, "Well, that was a crime scene. I ain't part of that." Right? So basically he was instructed that if there's a shooting or a crime scene, right?
Hmm.
You're not supposed to touch the crime scene, right? So you're
Yeah.
not like you can't get close to try to revive someone. So he already like broke stats in trying to revive her, and then he remembered that that's not protocol. Remember, this is only his second day on the job,
Uh-huh.
right? And he just needed to wait for the cops to come, right?
Mhm.
Um, so the detective asked, "So what's more important, saving a life or a crime scene?" He said, "No, saving a life." "So you didn't do anything, did you?" He's like, "No." And this guy's trained. He was a National Guardsman. He had that type of training. Like he had like this guy was a National Guardsman, meaning like so his job previously before this made him do CPR training, first aid training, etc., right? Like things like that. So they thought this was really weird, and of course they gave him a stupid polygraph. And we know by now from all this true crime that we do, polygraphs like they don't mean
We don't
shit.
know. Yeah.
So much that they're not even permissible in any court, right?
Hmm.
Why they still even administer them, I don't know.
I don't know either. Just to maybe
I
scare
it
you. I
makes no
feel like it
sense. If they're not permissible in
scares
court, what are you going
people
to do with it? Just
more than anything.
create a biased opinion of what's going on,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because there are many people who know how to beat a polygraph,
I'm waiting until
and
the AI starts asking you questions.
right? Oh, here we go on the AI thing. Jeez, you,
That's the next
you, Lewis,
polygraph,
man,
man.
huh?
Sorry. That's the next polygraph.
Yeah. Even though he failed the polygraph, he was still enthusiastic in telling his story, almost like he wanted to be part of the team of investigation.
Okay.
Yeah. So like he's like, oh, well, this happened, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then the shots I heard, and then I hid behind the car, and this and that. The guy loved to talk. Okay. The guy loved to talk. Then the detective asked him about the state of clothing at the time of Michelle. He said
Okay.
because she had her breasts hanging out, he thought she was a prostitute. What a dumbass. So breasts automatically means prostitute to him, not assault, not rape, not sex worker. Like, oh no, she a hooker. Look at her tits are out.
Okay.
Then he said, and then he found out she was in a Kid Rock, a Kid Rock extra, extra in a Kid Rock video.
Yeah.
And I said that explains why she was dressed that way. Like,
Yeah.
the more Jennings talked, the more investigators began to wonder if the helpful security guard knew was a witness or was he a participant.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So they
interesting.
start suspecting Raymond.
Okay.
Okay. Jennings had told Longshore he heard the shots fired, saw muzzle flashes, but couldn't see the shooter. Okay.
Okay.
When he was interviewed, Jennings said that he saw a projectile laying on the pavement and that he speculated that projectile was there because the shooter accidentally shot into the ground as he approached Michelle. It took us hours to determine that's what occurred. That's what the detective said.
Okay.
That doesn't mean he's the participant, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Okay. It just means that he noticed things that took hours for detectives to notice.
For sure.
Right. Remember, this guy was there.
Yeah.
Right. He's
Wasn't he like
odd.
100 yards though away? So that's about a
Yeah, but then
football field.
closer. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like, I mean, he was there. The shots were fired. He saw, but he couldn't see the shooter.
Mhm.
Right. So, like,
Coincidentally.
but you can hear things if when you're in like that vicinity. Sometimes you can hear where things are coming from, what they're doing. A blue Mustang isn't a car that does not stand out, right?
Yeah. And then
And if
if
you
it's the
see the
only one
blue
in the
Mustang
parking lot.
rolling, right,
Yeah.
that's where your eyes are going to be. But that doesn't mean it's dark, man. That doesn't mean that you're going to be able to see the shooter,
Mhm.
right?
No. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't. And that's the thing. Unless how I mean, how many of those car parks are that full, or maybe they're full, maybe they're empty. It's harder to tell if they're behind cars.
Right?
Yeah. So that's another thing too. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. No wonder it's 22 pages.
Yeah. So the detectives also found Jennings suspicious because he knew about the sequence of the shots that were fired.
Okay.
The first shot was point blank into her chest. That's exactly what it was. Usually, only after an autopsy is done do you know a sequence of the wounds. Suspicious, maybe, but also very circumstantial, if you ask me. Again, this guy was there. He's not looking at a crime scene. First, he's previously trained, right? As a
Yeah.
National Guard,
Yeah.
right? It's not like it's his first fucking rodeo,
Yeah.
right? And second of all, he was there. He heard the shots. He saw what was going on. Like, you can count the shots, right? And then after the shots, he gets close to the body. He can see everything that went on. The
Okay.
cops weren't present when it happened. So, like, they're going to show up and they're going to have to try and guess more than him who was actually there. Correct?
True.
So I mean, like, there's that perspective as well, which I think detectives were,
A little
not
bit.
looking at, right?
Yeah. Lenient on maybe.
3 days after the murder, Jennings quit his night security job because he couldn't feel comfortable around there anymore, which is pretty understandable,
Yeah.
right? So he dropped off his uniform at the strip mall on Palmdale Boulevard. Of course, Detective Longshore found out, and a few days later, they confiscated the nylon security jacket and the beige short sleeve shirt that the dark pants that Jennings wore that night in the parking ride. Luckily, the clothes hadn't been washed, meaning it could be a DNA gold mine, right?
Yeah.
So they took the uniform to the crime lab where the tech ran tests for blood and gunshot residue and so on. And it was all negative,
Okay.
right? Lots of Raymond Jennings DNA, but nothing that could pin him to a shooting in a parking lot, right?
Okay.
No blood, no gunshot residue, zip, which tended to back up Jennings' story, and he was nowhere near the shooting. But this wasn't Longshore's first rodeo, the detective, right? and he couldn't stop thinking something just didn't quite add up.
Mhm.
So Longshore called Jennings in again and talked to him for hours. And the guy remained as polite as he could be, like he was trying hard to help. Like Jennings at this time, like he wants to talk. His, he wants to help.
Yeah.
But that wasn't necessarily a sign of innocence for Longshore,
No, it
right?
isn't. Just to get you
Longshore
yourself on
decided
the
to
inside.
question Michelle's best friend, Jennifer Peterson,
Mhm.
the last person to see Michelle before her murder,
Okay.
right? And Longshore suggested that they could just go and have a look at the crime scene together, see if anything occurred to her. And as they got to the part of the parking lot where Michelle's car had rolled from striking the planter, the detective said, "Okay, this is where Michelle's car was." And Jennifer said, "No, it wasn't." And he said, "Are you sure?" She said, "Yeah, we parked it under a light deliberately because she was concerned about the vehicle's safety." Right?
Mhm.
The brightly lit parking space Jennifer pointed as was 17 spaces away from the first responders found Michelle's car with her body inside. So why did she move? Why to a darker place, exactly where she didn't want to park her car? Maybe she went somewhere more discreet to change out of a mini skirt. She was supposed to be going to English class, right? I
Yeah.
don't think she wanted to show up dressed like prostitute according to Ray Jennings. Oh, but she was in a Kid Rock video, but that explains it because all the girls around Kid Rock look like prostitutes.
Well, I mean, isn't that wrong at that time? Go on.
Whatever. Um,
The way they were dressed, at least. Not saying that they were.
so of course investigators confronted Jennings with that discovery and they drew a blank. Jennings insisted the Mustang had never moved, that it was exactly where he first saw 20 minutes before Michelle and Jennifer got back from LA. So was he lying? They were confused now, but they also looked into other leads. The Antelope Valley started having a bit of a meth problem, okay, in that area. And gangs had come right along with it, and they all
Of
knew about
course.
the murder. Pardon?
Of course, that's what happens with the meth labs and stuff. Hey, gangs come along and yeah, it happens.
Right?
That fun part, yeah.
The Antelope Valley started having a bit of a meth problem, and gangs came right along with it. And they all knew about the murder, and everyone knew about the murder with opinions and all. They had people confessing like teenagers, early 20s up who were involved in the drug trafficking were saying she was killed because she owed money to a dope dealer. Of course, he checked that out, but Michelle didn't use drugs. So a lot of people were, there's always idiots who come out with like stupid,
These guys that are doing meth too. You want to seriously take them, you know?
a lot of them just probably want to go to jail because they're homeless and need food
Yeah.
and a bed, right? He did learn from the gang enforcement team that the gang members had been causing trouble in the parking lot, stealing hubcaps, rims, anything they could get their hands on for quite a while.
Okay.
Oh, and the confessing, it wasn't really confessing, more like taking credit for Michelle's murder so they could use it to scare cops back. Yeah. They would say, "I killed Michelle, and if you don't uh, put out it, then I'll kill you too, fucking gang idiots." Like they would threaten cops like that. Like that was the kind of fucking attitude that these gangbangers had. They wanted the street cred, so they would fucking tell the cops, "Yeah, I did it. You better fucking tell everybody that I did it." To you. No fucking morons.
And even, even it's so stupid. Okay, go on.
Fucking gang idiots. No, they are. They really are. I don't know. Anyways, Jennings said he didn't say any of that gang stuff in the parking lot. He didn't see any of that gang stuff in the parking lot before or after the murder. Nobody at all, for that matter. That raises more questions, like why would gangbangers attack and kill a church-going kid who had no connections to them whatsoever? What do you think, JT? Why
Well,
would
unless
they?
they were scooping, like unless they were scoping out the car as the parking lots, right? But I mean, he would have seen them come in. You would think the security guard, right? He would have seen them
Yeah.
come in through the entrance or whatever, right? And if she was taking her clothes off to change, why would she move over just 17 spots and wait? Why wouldn't she just wait for her friend there and tell her friend to wait there for her? You know what I mean? If that was all that was going on too, right? Like, why would you move it over all of a sudden? Right? Why is it in a different spot? So,
Well,
which is interesting.
I think the theory of wanting to change before going to class is a right one.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, changing. No, why would you not do it with your friend still waiting there, like at the end of the show? You know what I mean? Like,
I don't
you
know,
know how
maybe
she flashed the lights and just
she thought it was safe,
maybe I don't know. I mean,
right?
yeah. So it's just weird that it's moved over too. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, it was moved over from the light to the dark spot, right? So she
From yeah,
probably
from what the two people have said so far, right?
yeah.
So,
Then a tip. 17-year-old Victoria Richardson,
uh-uh.
who had been taken into custody on another charge, claimed that she had information about the murder. She said
Always
she was in
people
the
that get arrested for something else, eh? That's what I
yeah.
love about that, eh?
Yeah.
All of a sudden they remember something. I got some information to sell you if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, go on.
Or when they do go to jail because they got caught and then
Yeah.
6 months later they say I'm sorry, I found Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. Another one. Yeah.
Okay. You
Yeah.
couldn't find Jesus before you committed your crime?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's crazy. Go. Okay. Go on.
She said she was in her car with her 3 other people that night listening to music near the northwest corner of the parking lot. They were smoking weed. She heard a tapping sound, probably the gunshots. She saw another car drive by, a random car in the parking lot, and she saw the security guard walk by just moments before the shooting as he made his patrol, and she decided to leave. And when they left the parking lot, went right through the crime scene and ended up stopping and talking to Mr. Jennings and saying, "Wait, what happened?" He said, "It's a shooting." So the detectives found this even more interesting because with all the talk, he said Jennings never mentioned this encounter with the teenagers.
I
So,
know. It's weird though.
okay, but like obviously he's not the shooter when there's another fucking witness saying the shooting was happening. We were driving out and Jennings told him it's a shooting.
I know. How did like there's okay.
There's so much confusion.
So
I was
Jennings
listening to
said
this.
he knew there was the shooting, right?
Well, obviously you can hear shots.
Yes, he heard something, right? And these people that were driving out heard something, right? And they asked Jennings what it was, and he said it was a shooting.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just what he speculated to say to them. I don't know. I don't know why he didn't. Did he say that he seen other people drive out? Like that is the that's what I was wondering.
No, he
That's
didn't
another
give
thing.
them this information,
Yeah, like
right?
why not? If you're
Maybe he
talking
just
so
forgot.
much, maybe. But I mean, why forget something that
Because
was
your
part of the evening?
adrenaline's so high when you fucking see someone who's been murdered right in front of you and you think she's a prostitute, but wait, no, she was from the Kid Rock video.
In this Kid Rock video, holy fuck!
It just killed me. That whole part just killed me. At first, I thought she was a prostitute, but then I understood that she was coming from a Kid Rock video. So that explained why she looked like a prostitute because Kid Rock's always surrounded by prostitutes
Oh my
or
gosh!
women who look like prostitutes. It just killed me. There's actual footage of the trial and stuff on YouTube you guys can find. And interviews. There's a whole Dateline episode too that I listened to, and like this whole
Is that
thing
why
was
you got the accent from it like that? The
yeah,
way you
man.
do
You
it?
gotta
Okay.
listen to his accent. Like it's just he's yeah, it's fucking hilarious, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Where do we leave off?
oh sorry.
It's a
She
shooting.
saw another car, yeah, in the
Found that
parking lot.
interesting.
Wait, what happened? It's a shooting. So the detectives found this even more interesting because with all the talk,
Yeah.
he said Jennings never mentioned this encounter with the teenagers. So they went back and questioned him at his house and again asked him to tell him everything when that happened. And he stuck to that story. That's when he confirmed that there had been a second vehicle or another vehicle that had spoken to him. Victoria Richardson. Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember seeing that now. And it all just keeps getting more and more suspicious for
Yeah.
the detectives, right? 6 months go by, no suspects besides Jennings, no other leads, and a bunch of billboards are up with Michelle's picture that said, I wasn't ready to die at 18. Can you help catch my killer?
Wow.
That's pretty fucked up.
I never see signs like that in our city. I don't know why, but
No, but they're big on billboards in the US. Have you ever watched that movie, Five Billboards?
no, I haven't.
You have to, man. It was a brilliant movie. It won an Oscar, I think. But it's based on a true story and it explains how it all started there in the US.
Okay.
And Woody Harrelson's in it. You're
I thought that
uh
was my boy. You're gonna
yeah,
say I
your
heard you
boy. Yeah. Well, he's my
say.
boy too. I love him, man. I love Woody Harrelson.
uh,
I think he's such a great actor too. He's on a personal level, like on the interviews that I've seen of him, he's fucking hilarious. And like
Him and my
as an
other boy might be
actor, I'm
related.
always in awe of every role he does. He's really good.
I know how him and my other boy like
Who's
he's
your other boy?
Matthew McConaughey. I like
Oh
that.
yeah. All right. All right. All right. All
Yeah,
right.
so oh, yeah, and they might be related apparently.
Yeah,
So
that's a funny story. They are best friends too.
so it is interesting. Very
So 6 months go by, no suspects besides Jennings, no other leads, and a bunch of billboards are up with Michelle's picture that said, I wasn't ready to die at 18. Can you please help catch my killer?
hmm.
On October 11th, 2000, on what would have been Michelle's 19th birthday, Michelle's family were in New York City on the Montel Williams
Montel
show.
Williams. I haven't heard
Yeah,
that
you
name in
you
a
remember
while.
the Montel Williams show?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Uh,
they bare their souls on national TV. A psychic. Of course, there's always a fucking psychic, man.
Sorry,
In all those fucking shows, oh, yes. Oh, we
I can
lost our
see it
daughter.
now.
She was murdered. We're trying to find the murderer. Oh, yes. Let me see. I can help you. I see her. Yes. Okay. Here's,
I love it. I love it.
her name was Sylvia Brown. She leans forward, clasping her hands, like they always do. As if they wanted to bring Pat and Mike closer. Sylvia begins describing Michelle's killer in a vision that had just come to her. Oh,
Ooh.
he's a very large build, but his name is Lee or Leon, as in Raymond Lee Jennings. Right there on national TV, Jennings' name was being spread. He was working at a Toyota dealership. It was on the
Wow.
big screen there, and he flipped his shit because now he realized that the detectives and family thought it was him.
Or
So
we're
he
gonna
had
think it was
no idea he was a suspect. These cops keep going over and over and over, and he's just cooperating happily without a fucking lawyer.
him.
And blah 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 blah, and they have no other suspects, and they hang on to every blah and write down every blah to twist the narrative to put this guy as the
The suspect.
suspect, right?
What's the
Meanwhile,
prime
the
one?
O'Keefe's, Michelle's family, thought that the detectives were losing interest in the case because all this time had passed. So they took it to the Montel Williams show, and then they met with civil attorney Rex. Rex said there's always a civil attorney, Rex. They always have those stupid names that they think they're fucking badass, but really it's small penis envy.
Yeah, yeah.
um, Rex said he would help him file a wrongful death lawsuit against the city of Palmdale for the lack of security cameras and against the private All Valley security company hired to patrol the park and ride lot.
Nice.
It, well, I mean, at
I
this
mean,
point, you have
pressure
no
on
leads.
everybody.
You're looking for your daughters. You're sad. You're distraught because losing a child is the worst thing that could ever happen to anybody.
Hmm.
And and then it's like, what else are you gonna do? Let's fucking sue these people for not fucking making sure my little girl was safe, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
That's what you're gonna do. Um, Rex was into the investigation now, like a detective on steroids. And unlike the police, he kept it constant touch with the O'Keefe family. He told the O'Keefes he was going to get a private investigator on it and help them out. And he did get them one. However, most of the money they won from the lawsuit went to pay for it. Because that's what a lawyer named Rex would do.
Does. Yeah.
Okay? Don't trust Rex. Ever.
Better call Salt. No.
Yeah. Yeah. They added Raymond Jennings to their wrongful deaths lawsuit, and Rex would conduct a deposition. Rex, fully prepared, had carefully studied all of Longshore's interviews with Jennings. He's gotten to know Jennings' mannerisms, his way of talking. Charming guy, could disarm a perfect stranger. Even a suspicious detective, Paris had already invested a considerable sum of money in the O'Keefe investigation. And perhaps to add some pressure on the DA, he
Of course.
invited a special guest, a reporter from the Antelope Valley Press. So on besides the psychic, they invited a fucking reporter,
But, yeah.
right? He brought the press into the deposition to put pressure on the DA, and when Jennings walked in, he didn't bring a lawyer. Dumbass. Again, I can't stress this enough, guys. Always bring a lawyer, okay? If you have no idea, and or if you do, have a cop at your door, no matter where you live in this world, and they want to ask you questions, you say lawyer, whether you're innocent or guilty. Simple as that. Lawyer.
Why? I would like to talk to them sometimes.
Yeah, but you know what?
Shoot the shit.
That's what's going to get people in trouble. Lawyer.
Apparently not up till now. So
Well,
far.
and they'll always tell you, well, you're not under arrest, so you don't need one. Yes, but I'd like one present. Doesn't matter. Lawyer. It was an unfair advantage because he didn't have an attorney, and Rex was able to go for an hours back looping him and backtracking him and putting him in different spots. Complete manipulation, man. He completely it reminds me of the Memphis 3. Do you remember when
Mhm.
the fucking cops manipulated the young kid who had like a low IQ, literally mentally like
Yeah,
um
but this is not
ill
the cops doing it. This is like a special investigator, right?
in front of cops
In
and in
front of
front of a
cops.
reporter, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not joking. This is bullshit. You don't fucking do this, man.
Yeah.
After the deposition, the O'Keefes were convinced that Jennings was the killer. Me, not so much yet. I mean, everything these cops have is circumstantial evidence.
Yeah, there's no real evidence. There's no
Yeah.
blood. There's no weapon. There's no,
No,
no video.
no. The deposition had accomplished exactly what Rex Paris set out to do. Based on what Jennings said in that deposition, Longshore wrote up the case and submitted it to LA County Deputy District Attorney Rob Fultz.
Okay.
This guy took a good look and declined no prosecution because he saw that there were some serious problems with the physical evidence in the case. He was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to fucking take this case. You don't have enough physical evidence,
Yeah. So the
right?
prosecution didn't even want to press charges.
No. Like, there wasn't any physical evidence.
Yeah, nothing that they can get a warrant for. Nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
So he thought, well, let's wait on this one. We've got other ones more urgent at this point. The O'Keefes were running out of options. Rex, Detective Longshore had done all they could, and then a new sheriff came to town. A
Oh,
retired sheriff's
always
deputy.
a new sheriff that
There's
comes.
always a new sheriff in town. And a retired sheriff's deputy named Jim Jeffrey.
A red, yeah, Jim
You know,
Jeffrey.
these names, they are so American. I'm just like, America, America. Every time. Jim Jeffrey. You get more American than that, Sheriff Jim Jeffrey. One day, in the dead of winter, he reached out and touched the 6 foot high polished wood cross the O'Keefe had that erected the park and ride in Michelle's memory. He
Mhm.
said, you know, Michelle, you're going to have to help me here. I'm going to need some help. I may call upon you. Sometimes a fresh pair of eyes can maybe spot something that looks a little different. The other detectives were concentrating around one person, and that was Raymond Lee Jennings. But he was going to do what I could do. He was going to do whatever he could do to prove that he didn't kill this girl.
Yeah.
And if they could get past that, then they could move forward and go after the person that did kill her. So initially, this guy's objective was correct,
Yeah. This is
right?
like you speaking of Woody Harrelson and that it's reminding me of a True Detectives kind of story now with these two that come in to town to clean up.
So Jim Jeffrey was a former sheriff who, after a 28-year stint in LA County sheriffs, he retired and became a private investigator. The more Jeffrey learned about Michelle's case, the more it felt like he knew her. She was a badass who wouldn't have quit. Jeff wanted to try something completely different. Instead of proving Jennings was guilty, Jeffrey wanted to prove his innocence instead. So he called Richard Longshore and made his pitch and said he wanted in. Longshore allowed it, and off to work they went. He started by getting hold of the tapes of the deposition Rex had done, the manipulative ones.
Yeah, yeah.
He wanted to hear Jennings. Jeffrey listened and he watched every minute of the dozens of hours of videotaped interviews with Jennings. As he did, his mind began to do a U turn. He started to believe that Jennings was really the murderer. He came to this conclusion by studying his gestures and movements and thought as much as detail as this guy tells his story. He said, if he didn't pull the trigger, he was standing next to the guy who did. No doubt in my mind, he was there. I believe that he grabbed her and she hit him. She wasn't going to be taken against her will. She didn't have that kind of background at all. Very strong girl, actually. But there was one huge problem. Jeffrey's conclusions were pretty much what investigators had already presented to the DA, which had already failed to persuade him to file charges. So Michelle's dad, Michael, hears of what Jeffrey was up to and thought he could help.
Okay.
The problem wasn't the evidence, it was the way it was presented to the DA. So they came up with a new way to sell the evidence against Jennings. They put together a PowerPoint of around 35 key points. They
Okay.
include bits of answers that look like the body language and tone of voice. So they edited the tape.
Okay.
Okay. A $6 an hour security guard is not going to have that level of information unless you were there. They forget to mention that he was a National Guard before,
Hmm.
right? So he knew the order of the shots, he knew the angle of the shots. He described accidental discharge where external discharge was, and it's the middle of the night. So, you just don't casual observer, you just don't, as a casual observer, just doesn't pick up on these things.
Hmm.
He even talked about how her body shut down, which he would not have been able to see from where she was. He said he was. But they forget to mention that he said he went to her and was going to try CPR. She was still twitching.
Hmm.
You get what I'm saying? So he admitted that he went close to the body,
Yeah.
but he didn't do much else because it was a crime scene. He wasn't allowed to.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael O'Keefe met with Deputy DA Robert Fultz and presented the edited clips on the PowerPoint, and they called him back and said they'd make an arrest. But then they were going to make the arrest. He was nowhere to be found. Where was he? Where was Jennings? I'll tell you where Jennings was. He was halfway around the world serving in Iraq.
He's a National Guard. They do heavy things. They go on the boat. Those are the big guys.
Yeah, but he went to war.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was going to be back in 2 weeks, though.
Okay.
And 6 years after Michelle's death, there was an arrest.
Oh, wow.
So here's how the arrest went. When they knew he was back, they started surveilling him. Because he had kids, they didn't want to arrest him in front of the kids. How considerate. So they waited for a day. He left the house on his own and took him down in a traffic stop, and he was ordered out at gunpoint by the uniformed deputies. And he said to them, I've been in Iraq. Is this about Michelle O'Keefe?
So right away he brings it up,
Right, because in the back of his head, he knew that they were now
thinking
thinking
about it.
that he was
Yeah.
the suspect. I mean, he was
Yeah.
interrogated by Mr. Rex, right?
Yeah. And he's seen
Like,
it all over the Montel Williams show.
yeah. So it was bullshit, right? Although this was personal for Detective Longshore because of all those years going through boxes of evidence, poring over crime scene, photographs of Michelle's body slumped in her blue Mustang in the dead of night. He now finally had his man, but not all the answers.
Okay.
One question in particular had been bugging him: the gun used to kill Michelle. So Jennings must have fired that gun, and yet he'd sworn over and over that he wasn't carrying that night. Security company rules didn't allow it. But according to Longshore's research, he discovered Jennings was no stranger to guns. In the jail's interview room, he asked him about carrying. He said he carried a gun all the time in North Carolina, but that he didn't in California because it was illegal. He also told the detectives he didn't know that the parking lot had a history of violence. He just couldn't get a confession out of Jennings. And
Mhm.
in the state of California, you really don't need one by law in order to get an arrest. They took Jennings to downtown LA to the men's central jail.
Mhm.
The time before trial, there were a lot of vocal doubters. Included in these doubters were prosecutors and supervising prosecutors in the DA's office that told
Wow.
Michael Blake they told Michael Blake, the DA, to get rid of this thing, dismiss it. It's not going to go anywhere. You're never going to win it. It's a loser, and move on. So you have your fellow colleagues telling you, like, there's not enough,
Yeah.
right?
It's not enough. It's not. It's all. Yeah. There's not enough.
So Michael Blake,
Enough
the
evidence to
DA,
convict him.
yeah. So Michael Blake, the DA, asked Longshore what he should do. And Longshore said, whatever you decide, I'll back you. But if you don't follow through the case, but if you don't follow through, the case isn't ever going to trial. So he decided to move forward. And in March of 2008, the trial began 8 years after Michelle's death.
Wow, man. And so that's crazy. So like even with nothing, they're gonna go and see what they can do.
Yeah,
Because once the thing is, once you try somebody for murder and they're not guilty, that's it. You can't try them for that same crime.
right.
You could try them for a lesser crime, if especially if it's first degree murder, right? So they that's why they're trying to say, listen, you don't got enough to go. If you know, even though he did it, you don't have enough. Even though you think he may have did it or whatever, you don't have enough to prove it, right? In the court of law. I mean, you're gonna have a jury there, and you gotta hope that jury is
At this
gonna.
point, it's all about manipulating a jury,
It is.
right?
It's the whole thing has been a bit about a manipulation from what I've been hearing so far, right? So
Right.
it's not. It's
Because
not
right
like.
at this point, he could be the killer,
Mhm.
but he could not either,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's enough circumstantial evidence.
It's like this. It's like
Yeah. Is he or isn't he?
yeah,
Right.
it's tilted.
So s- March 2008, the trial begins. Blake told the 9 jurors that Raymond Jennings assaulted Michelle O'Keefe for his own ugly reasons and escalated his attack when she resisted. And this was a quote: he knows she's still alive. That makes those remaining 3 shots to her face an execution of first degree.
I forget.
He said Jennings in a way convicted himself when he talked so freely to investigators. Even to civil attorney Rex Paris without a lawyer. He knew too much to be innocent. He never saw a shooter, but he's able to tell them where the shooter was standing, how the shots were fired. The trial goes on for a month or so, and in April 2008, 4 days went by with no word from a jury.
Mm.
April 28th, 2008, they all filed into the courtroom, and for the foreperson stood up and told the judge they could not get beyond 9-3 for conviction.
Hmm.
So there were 3 jurors who couldn't convict him.
Yeah, it would have to be unanimous, right?
The judge declared
Anonymous.
a
Sorry,
mistrial.
unanimous. Yeah,
So the judge
unanimous.
declared,
Sorry.
pardon? Unanimous.
Yeah, you unanimous. I had to keep correcting myself there. I did it like 3 times.
You're hilarious.
Mhm.
So trial number 2 began January 8th, 2009. Jennings had already been behind bars for a little more than 4 years.
So he's still behind bars.
Yeah, even though there's a mistrial, he's still behind bars.
Oh wow.
And all that time, he continued to maintain he was an innocent man. The same judge, Michael Johnson, tried the case, and the same prosecutor, Michael Blake. The opening statement from the prosecution went something like this: "This is our last opportunity to speak directly to you. So rather than slow things down or distract with images and so forth, I'd just like to take a moment to tell you what I believe the evidence in this case will prove as the evidence unfolds. In this case, you will have the sensation of stepping into a time capsule. Much of the evidence that you will hear is coming forward after years of an exhaustive investigation by the sheriff's department. And it will reveal, in conclusion, that Michelle O'Keefe was murdered that night by Raymond Lee Jennings, a security guard working at the park and ride lot." The defense statement by defense attorney David Houchman was as
Okay.
follows: "Good morning. I represent Mr. Jennings. You see him seated at the end of the table. As the evidence comes out in this case, you will find that no fingerprint evidence connects Mr. Jennings to this crime. There exists there exists gunshot residue, none connecting Mr. Jennings to this crime, and there exists no blood evidence, of which there was plenty, but none which connects Mr. Jennings to this crime. She put up a fight. It was brutal, and she has DNA recovered from under her left hand, fourth fingernail. It's a mix of male, not Raymond Jennings. And when this case is concluded, there's only one direction the evidence points, and it points away from Mr. Jennings." So you see, the prosecution presents all the circumstantial evidence, and the defense literally presented the facts, the evidence.
They're
They
even saying
did the,
there's shit underneath the nails.
that no DNA
Yeah.
on her belongs to Jennings, and they tested that. There was no gunshot residue on his uniform, and
Yeah.
they tested that. Nothing, nothing. But the prosecution believes he's guilty because he looked at the crime scene and says, "This is what I think happened. The shooter was standing over here. He was standing this close. It shot 3 times on her face. The first shot, though, before it went to the floor. This is my opinion." But because he was smarter than a detective in investigating a crime scene, not to
Mhm.
mention the fact that he was present and heard it all,
Mhm.
right? That's enough to convict the man.
That's it. It's manipulation at its best.
So the prosecution this time ended up finishing off with the last witness, which was a retired FBI agent who painted the picture of Michelle being sexually assaulted because of an opportunity that presented itself, not out of plan. Security guard sees pretty girl all alone, and boom, let's have some perverted fun. Only she knows how to fight, and since she's too much trouble, she's shot dead. And boom, there's your motive. 5 weeks of trial, and the jury comes back with another hung jury, 11-1.
So there's still one person that believes he's innocent,
Yep.
right?
One person that could not be persuaded that he was guilty.
Wow.
After all this, it was now up to the judge to either dismiss the case or have this case go to trial. He made Jennings go to a third trial.
The fucking guy, poor guy, man. How many years now is that in jail?
So, Judge Chung was the trial judge
Hmm.
in the third trial. The jury was taken to the actual parking lot crime scene. Personally, I don't agree with this because it starts a jury off to think emotionally as opposed to a clear perspective on
Yeah.
evidence instead. You get what I'm saying? Like, I get part of being a lawyer is to pull on emotions of the jury. I don't think that this extent, though, of actually showing up to the crime scene, taking the jury to the crime scene physically,
That's changed
is,
over the years too. It had to have.
I'm not sure. I think in some states it has, in others it hasn't.
No, no, I mean
And
like
I'm,
the actual parking lot itself might have changed over the years, even the landscape.
but it didn't.
Oh, really? Eh? Okay.
No.
So I mean, and in that way, I mean, big deal. They get to see how far he was standing and blah blah blah. That's really what they get to see, right?
Yeah.
It might even help out to Jennings' part, right?
Yeah. After 3 weeks, the jury comes back with a not guilty of first degree murder.
So he was tried
But,
3 times.
but it wasn't over. The jury, found him guilty of second degree murder.
Hmm. So they think he was there at least. So even just if you're working and being a person that's working
No,
somewhere,
no,
that's
no.
just,
That's not second degree murder. First degree murder
or that he
is
was,
planned murder. Second degree
yes, it's
murder is, oh, there's an
no,
opportunity. I took
just,
it. It
yeah, it was
happened.
there.
Yeah. So
Okay,
the family, a few weeks later, got to give their impact statements. So I watched these impact statements. I was a ball of tears, okay, because I'm a mom.
okay,
These people lost their daughter, right? And this guy, in my opinion, so far is innocent. So far through this case, we'll
hmm,
see if my opinion changes. Um, and felt like shit for him too, because now he's being victimized,
okay,
right?
okay,
And Michael O'Keefe, Michelle's dad, said, and this is the quote: "When I learned of Michelle's death, I felt a piece of me die. I have to ask what kind of demon lives within you to have done such a dastardly act." Michelle's mom, Pat O'Keefe, said, "You said you watched her die because you didn't want to disturb the crime scene. An innocent person wouldn't say something like that. You will have to live with that image of her dying and taking her last breath." Michelle's younger brother, Jason, said, "You can finally do the right thing today. You can repent for your sins. Ask God for forgiveness. Ask all of us for forgiveness. And if you ask me, I will forgive you." The Jennings said that he turned, then Jennings said, as he turned his chair directly to face the family. This guy didn't hide like fucking, what's his face? Uh, Dahmer did.
hmm,
Okay. He didn't hide his face. He turned his entire chair over to face the family. Okay.
yeah,
And this
yeah.
is what he says: "I sit here as an innocent man, and I've heard you speak on God and Christ as my Lord and Savior. I will stand before God, and this is one sin that I will not be judged for. I'm at peace in my life, and I laugh and I smile because I hold no remorse, because I did not kill your sister. That is the bottom line. Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and I will stand before him, and I'll stand before him
Yeah.
with you, and with you, and he'll answer this question." Then he turns to the judge, and his quote to the judge was, "I don't ask any mercy from this court because I know I don't have any coming. I will take my time and I will hold my head up as a man. My 5 children will know who their father is, and I will know he is, and they will know he is not a murderer."
5 children. Oh fuck, they
Yeah, he
party
had
down
5
there.
kids. The judge sentenced him to the max for second degree murder, which is 40 years to life.
Wow.
So after 10 years, the family felt justice and the big bad wolf was put away. End of story, right? Or maybe not. Tune in next time when the twisted story continues. And this is the end of our killer content show. Thanks for tuning in. Please tune in again for the continuation of this story. There's a lot of twists and turns coming, shocks, um, more tragedy, some happiness, and more who done it.
Done it. Yeah, eh? Yeah. Make sure to
Yeah.
like and subscribe, guys, and tune in next time. So for the update for the second part of this one, really, to be honest with you. But yeah, we'll see you then, Leslie.
Hi, guys.
Take care.